you so much for being here. I know it's early in the morning for me and it's late in the evening for you. Where are you sitting at currently?
I'm sitting in my home office in Sydney, Australia. Yes, in 9:30 or not, a bit after 9 in the evening. So
Yeah, this is one
yeah,
of the good times that it works for us to come together.
there is a very narrow window with the
Yes,
US and Australia,
yes,
unfortunately.
yeah, there is. So let's get right into the questions that I have for you and all of the wisdom that you have to talk about on this
Mhm,
subject. What
mhm.
are the 7 levels of energy, and how do those 7 levels impact our stress?
Mhm. Okay. Well, basically, the 7 levels of energy is something that was developed by Bruce Schneider with IPEC. And everybody has a filter through which they view the world. It's sort of like a pair of glasses that we wear, and everybody's glasses are a slightly different color or a slightly different tint. And those glasses that we wear can either expand our view of the world or they can really shrink it down into tunnel vision. And the stress side is when we tend to get down into tunnel vision. When we're under stress, it tends to limit what we see. So those filters influence how we think, feel, and act in circumstances. And that's what these 7 levels of energy are about. It's about how we're showing up on a day-to-day basis. The 7 levels are all normal. Everybody has little bits of all of them, and they're all okay to have. But what we call the first 2 levels are the sort of the catabolic levels. So they're the more energy sapping, the draining, the wearing out sort of levels.
Yeah.
And they're typically the stress levels. And obviously, when we're under stress, we have those stress hormones released, and it's really not good for our body in sort of the short or the long term.
Mhm.
So, of those 2 stress levels, level 1, which we consider to be the lowest level of energy, is what we call the victim level. So this is where someone feels not necessarily a victim to a perpetrator or something like that, but it's more a victim to their own thoughts and beliefs and circumstances that are going on. So they may feel trapped. They may feel like they don't have any choice. They may feel unable to make decisions. They may feel really stuck. There's a tendency to sort of apathy and lethargy. Uh, it's not a place of great self-esteem. It's that sort of, I'm a loser, I hate myself, why bother, that type of energy. And obviously for that reason, it is really draining.
Mhm.
Now, I said all of these levels, none of them are sort of bad, in inverted commas. There are some times when being a victim is okay. At the moment in Australia, we've got a really big flu outbreak, which is a nasty one. If you've got the flu and you need to be looked after, it is fine to be
Mhm.
apathetic and lethargic and, be a victim, because you need people to look after you. So that's an appropriate time to have that energy. But it's when we're feeling like a victim all of the time, where we're feeling like we have no control in our life and we really get stuck. That's not a great place to live. The level 2 energy, which is also a draining energy, this one is what we call the fighter. So this is where there is conflict. There may be resentment, frustration, blame. While level 1 was sort of I hate myself, level 2 is a little bit more I hate you. I'm unhappy with what's going on around me. Anger is the sort of predominant feeling, but it doesn't have to be outward anger. It doesn't have to be yelling and screaming at people. It can be anger that we turn inward, and when we're stewing and ruminating over stuff and getting really, really annoyed, but we're not outwardly expressing it.
Yeah.
It's still anger, and it's still as hurtful to us in the long run. It's that believing that life is hard, that people can't be trusted, that they're out to get me, and I have to defend myself and fight to get what I want.
Exhausting.
Yeah, which is really exhausting.
And Cheryl, can I interrupt you just really quickly? We're going to have for all of the listeners something that you can refer to look back on as far as these 7 levels. So as Cheryl's telling you, know that we'll have something that you can look at to reference as well.
Awesome. Okay, so those are the first 2 levels, which I say what we sort of call the sapping, draining levels. Typically, when you do the assessment, which is something that you've had done, you can have an assessment done and it will tell you what your energy levels are. And we have 2 different energy levels. There's our default level under stress, and that tends to be level 1 or level 2. Most of us under real duress and stress will go to victim or anger mode. It's just the way it is. The other levels are more when things are going well for us, when life's running more smoothly, when we feel in control, when we don't have that stress, then we move into the more positive energy levels. And these ones are fueling energy levels, they're healing levels, they make us feel better. The first one, as we're climbing up, level 3, is sort of the rationalizer. So this is where somebody is taking responsibility for their own life. So they're no longer feeling like a victim. They're no longer blaming everybody else. They're saying, okay, now, all right, it's on me. You know, I know I've contributed to this situation. Right. It's a place where you can forgive other people. So where you were blaming them, you're now saying, okay, I can forgive. I understand that behavior. I can forgive it. And it's cooperation as well. While we consider it a positive energy level, it is still a little bit about coping, tolerating, putting up with. So while it feels better than being angry or being a victim, we're still not probably living up to our full potential. Right. It's that intermediate. I like to think of level 3 as that sort of transition stage where we've moved out of the negative energy and we're moving into the positive, and we go through this sort of coping stage. And it can be very useful. Sometimes all we can do is cope in certain situations. So it can be very valuable. The next level, level 4, which I think a lot of triangles have a lot of level 4 energy, it's the caregiver. It's the person that shows real concern for other people. There's a lot of compassion for others, and there's that drive to help, to fix, to make better for other people. Yeah. And it's a genuine putting other people first. Some people give lip service to that, I care for others. This really is, it's more important for other people to be happy than for myself. It's that real caregiver energy. Yeah. And it's like, I love you. How can I help you? You know, we can work this out. What can I do to help? That's the type of energy with level 4. And while it's wonderful to care for other people and to put a lot of energy into others, if we don't at the same time look after ourselves, eventually our well runs dry. So if we're continually giving, it can lead to a place where we don't have that energy to give anymore. So while level 4 is a really positive energy level, there are times when we do have to sort of look after ourselves as well to refuel our own tanks. That's what moves us into level 5. And level 5 is the level I really like. We call it the opportunist, which sounds a little bit manipulative, but that's not actually what it's about. It's about seeing opportunity everywhere. Yeah. It's about looking at a situation and not seeing it as bad, but seeing it as an opportunity to learn, opportunity to experience. And it's the people who are looking for the win-win. So they want to help others, but at the same time, they know it's important for them to get something out of it as well. And that may simply be that you love doing what you're doing with other people. You might love being a teacher, and so you're getting as much from it as your students are, because you truly love that action. Right. And it's accepting others. It's not sort of judging up other people as much as perhaps some of the other levels. Because even level 4, where we're looking after people, we're sort of judging them as broken if we feel the need to look after them. Whereas at level 5, we don't see that anymore. We're looking for that win-win. And it's looking for the opportunities, and it's the place I like, level 5, because it is that sort of win-win situation. The last 2 levels, level 6 and level 7, are the more spiritual levels. And it's interesting. I went to a happiness conference in Sydney a short while ago, and I didn't think that I had prior to that met a person that lives predominantly in level 6 and level 7. But I had the great honor of meeting Mathieu Ricard, who is a Tibetan monk, geneticist, amazing man.
Person.
Yeah, exactly. A scientist who gave it all up to become a monk 35 years ago. And watching him speak, he is at those spiritual levels. Level 6 is what we call the visionary. So that's the person who has no judgment. They're not seeing good or bad. They have real joy at the experience of life. That everything about life is good. They have real wisdom that they like to share. And that sort of visionary, there's a lot of synthesis. So, Matthew writes books and he shares his knowledge in a really sort of gentle, calm way, non-judgmental way, which I really liked. Level 7 is the top level, which is what we call the creator level. And this is the absolutely no judgment level, absolute passion, and the point of sort of creation.
Yeah.
And the issue with level 6, level 7 is sometimes people can be seen as being a little bit aloof when they're in those levels because they are not judging things, and so if someone is unwell, they don't necessarily see it as a bad thing, so they may not rush to help that person. They just see it as it's an experience that person's going through, which can have its challenges, obviously. With the 7 levels, we sort of have a win-lose sort of story that we tell with each one. Level 1 is I always lose. No matter what happens, I'm the victim. I'm always going to lose. Level 2 is I'm going to win, and I want it to be at your expense. I want you to lose because I'm angry. And it's sort of that resentment and frustration coming through. Level 3 is I want to win, and if you win, it's okay. I don't really care if you win or you don't win. That's the sort of coping level.
Yeah.
Level 4, it's all about the other person winning. The other person winning is absolutely the priority, and you don't worry about you getting a victory in the situation. Level 5, as I said before, is the true win-win, where everybody wins. Level 6 is one of the spiritual levels where it's basically we always win. Everybody's always winning because life is an experience, and there's always joy and things to be found in the experience of living. Level 7 is there is no winning and losing, it's all an illusion. So that's getting a little more getting a little bit more existential. But those levels, the higher levels, are the places of intuition. We all have intuition. We all have that gut feeling. So that's where tapping into those levels is good.
Yeah. So as it relates then to the way that we move through life and the way that we engage with others, when we worked together and we did my ELI assessment, we were able to look at, if it's okay to go to a level 1, if that's where you're at currently, but it's about how long you stay in that level. And so I think it's important to know, and for all of our listeners to really understand, that you can go from level to level, and it's about finding the true balance in where yourself is best serving yourself and others. So in terms of engagement in life, what are the risks if we stay in one or the other? Because it's also, if I understand correctly, it's not necessarily good for us to always stay high and what we would look at as the good levels.
Mhm.
You talk to us a little bit about the path and the journey of going in and out from different levels.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that sort of the ultimate goal in a way is to have a conscious choice as to what level we're utilizing. Because there are times when anger is absolutely appropriate, and can serve us well. We
Yeah.
can get stuff done, and you know, especially as triangles, airports are, sometimes getting angry is the only way to get on that plane. Um, but so it's making a conscious choice. Stress is not the problem, it's how we react to the stress that's the problem. So if we go to something stressful happens in our life and we go to, I'm a loser, I hate myself, and we stay there for weeks, then we've got those stress hormones going through our body. The cortisol is there. It's doing damage to us from a health perspective. If instead we have a moment of, I'm a loser, I hate myself, but then we can say, wait a minute, that's just my level 1 energy talking. I don't really feel that way. And we look at the situation through a different lens, and we ask ourselves, well, how else could I see this? Am I really a victim? Then we can almost talk ourselves through the levels. And it's that sort of consciously choosing. So I see it as responding instead of reacting when things happen.
Yeah.
And certainly I've had situations, once I had my ELI done myself a number of years ago, we were still living in New York at that time. My husband, we had planned we were going to be living the north side of Sydney. We had the schools we spent money to enroll the kids in schools. We had everything sorted, and he was traveling, and he called me in New York and said, oh, they're moving head office in Sydney. We have to live somewhere else. Straight away I went to victim. Straight away I went to, why me? This is so not fair. Why is the company doing this? Then I was angry because I was like, bloody hell, the company always controls everything, and couldn't someone have told us this months ago? Then I went to coping mode. So then I was like, well, wait a minute, let me look into this. What I had friends in New York who were from the other side of Sydney who loved that side of Sydney. So I immediately emailed them and said, guys, this is the situation. What can I do? They sent me some schools, they sent me some information. And then I went into looking after the kids mode. So I went into sort of the carer mode. I've got to get them sorted first. Found the best possible school that my kids could be in all of Sydney in this process. So it ended up being a true win-win, and my kids are really happy, and we would never have found that school had that situation not happened. But had I stayed in victim and anger mode, I wouldn't have contacted my friends. They wouldn't have contacted other friends. I wouldn't have found out about the school, and we wouldn't have got into it. Yeah. So it was that ability to move, and I was in the shower actually as I was going
of course.
Levels.
Does it always progress numerically though? I mean, I know that it sometimes for me as I work through the knowledge of the levels can go from a 1 to a 4 to a 2 to, I tend to bounce around. Is that also something that's common?
I think that comes with the awareness.
Okay.
And you are someone who is very self-aware, you know yourself very well. I think people, when they're first learning about the levels, to jump from say a 1 to a 4 can be quite difficult, because if you really are in that victim place, to sort of jump to, okay, I'm going to look after other people, can be quite a lot. So with time and with learning, getting to know yourself, certainly. And you can go down as well, obviously. Things are going really, really smoothly, and you get that phone call. Like that day with my husband, I was having a really good day until he called. Right. And I went from level 4, level 5, straight down with the phone call.
Another question I wanted to ask you, we've got, in the world, there's a lot going on. There's things that are happening, doesn't matter where you live, whether it's natural disasters, politics stuff. And there tends to be, what I'm noticing is kind of a judgment around people that aren't as enlightened or aren't as self-aware or aren't as able to speak to all of this tough stuff. What would be some tips or some simple ways that we can just tune into our own self-awareness and where we're at, and not judge ourselves according to someone who might always live in a level 6 or who might be able to hold steady at a number 5, so that we're not judging ourselves when we're in a level 1 as compared to the people around us. Because I think that's human nature, is to compare ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But self-awareness doesn't mean we always have to be completely enlightened all the time.
No, and I think awareness really is as simple as observing ourselves and observing what's going on around us and taking notice. I think that's sort of the first step. And certainly for me, when I work with clients, awareness is number one building block. Because a lot of people do go through the motions. They're not really tuned into themselves. And it's not because they're not capable. It's just that they are distracted, or life is going on, and it's just easier to sort of roll along. So I think that first step of awareness is really just tuning in and sort of saying, okay, wow, what am I thinking at the moment? When I think that way, how do I feel? When I think and feel those ways, how do I act? And just asking ourselves those questions in the moment. So if we know that, my thought is, I'm really, really angry, and also I'm annoyed at someone and I'm feeling really, really angry, the action that may come out of that may not be our ideal self.
Yeah.
The other thing I think, which is an initial step with awareness, is understanding that the way we see the world may not be the truth. Our interpretation, our perception of a situation may not actually be the truth. And if we can think that there are other possible explanations for what somebody has done or what somebody has said, then that can help us also deal with that sort of negative, because those filters that we have and those lenses that we wear, they've typically come from our past. So, what's happened to us as a child, what's happened to us going through life affects how we see things. And especially if we are in the negative sort of energy levels, if we're in level 1 and level 2 a lot, we tend to look for the negative side of the story rather than the positive. Yeah. So again, awareness can be as simple as, well, I tend to be a glass half empty person. How might a glass half full person interpret this situation? Yeah. And what makes my version right? Because often our version, it was interesting. My husband, I always complain that he doesn't compliment me. And he basically, what he says is, I will put on something to go out, and he'll say, oh, is that a new dress? And I will say, yes. And that's the end of the conversation. So my interpretation is, he can't think of anything nice to say about how I look. So he'll just say, is that a new dress? That was my interpretation through my self-esteem issues. But finally we had an honest conversation about it. And I said to him, I said, you never compliment me, because I always compliment you. I always notice when you have a new dress. I said, but hey, you just say, have I got a new dress? He goes, but I'm complimenting you. So he thinks he's doing the right thing, but I'm getting hurt by it. So here's these two he thinks, wow, I'm doing the right thing. I'm being a good husband. I'm complimenting her. Yeah. But my filter is saying, gee whiz, why couldn't he say I look pretty? Or why couldn't he say, I look sexy? He had to say, is that a new dress? So that's awareness. When I was able to finally have a conversation, I suppose, where I actually said, honey, when you say that, this is how I take it. Mm-hmm. And that was eye-opening to him, because it had never occurred to him that that's how I would take that statement. Yeah. So awareness really is just aware of who we are and why we are the way we are. And that takes time, and that it does take that internal work. But if we start with that really simple, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And how am I acting? That's a really sort of straightforward way to sort of work through stuff.
Okay. So another question I have then, when we stay in the negative, the bottom 2, it sounds as though we are almost suppressing our capacity and suppressing our ability to do the things that we are meant to do. How can we become better at acknowledging and saying that we are brave and we do have capacity to get us out? I know you said that sometimes it's as easy as recognizing that you're in one of those two bottom levels. But in terms of celebrating our own values and celebrating our strengths, is there some mindfulness or some steps that we can use, like in a practical way, to acknowledge where we are in those two negative levels and then to move out of them?
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, acknowledging where we are and that it's okay to be there, I think, yeah, is the first step. Not beating ourselves up even more.
Yeah.
That, you know, I am at this level because of my history and, you know, my everything else, and it's okay for me to be here.
Mm-hmm.
But I have the choice: do I stay here or do I want to move? And what you said before about engagement, if we are just going through the motions, we can't reach our full potential. And we all have this amazing potential for something. You know, we all have gifts and strengths and passions within us. And if we're sort of shut down and not engaged, we're not allowing that potential to come through. So maybe just reminding ourselves that, you know, if we can move ourselves out of it, then we have a much better chance of reaching our potential and being who we were meant to be.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, it is a lot of the baggage that we've picked up along the way that puts us in those negative places.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't who we were when we were born.
Yeah.
You know, it's all those things that have worn us down over time.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because you mentioned to me before about the bravery. And in some ways, I prefer fearlessness because bravery sort of suggests overcoming an obstacle, which takes energy and which is fabulous, and grit is so, you know, so important in life. But if we're fearless and we're not scared of failure, it's not draining. If we approach every situation without fear, then we don't have to fight to overcome anything. Now, fearlessness is further down the track. It's, you know, they're all building blocks, and right. It's further down the track. But yeah, I like fearlessness. Do I practice it at all times? No. Right. I wish I could. Right. But, you know, if we were able to approach situations not worrying that we're going to fail or we're going to embarrass ourselves or we're going to not live up to expectations, don't have that fear and worry and anxiety, which is what stress is, then we can bring our full engagement and our full self to the situation.
So we had talked a little while ago about tools and ways to work through all this, and you had mentioned the Scope app. Can you talk to us a little bit about Scope? I've got it downloaded on my phone. How is that something that we could use every day to help us with this?
Basically, where this all started with Bruce was the ELI, which is the assessment you've had, which that assessment is a sort of a 20-minute online assessment that you do that gives you the big picture, how you approach life, what's your default, what's your stress mechanism, and what's your average level when things are going well. But it's more looking at an overall attitude towards life. What the Scope app does is it's a free app that anybody can download, and it's a series of questions that it asks you prior to doing something. It was originally developed for professional athletes, so people who are about to, you know, play golf or run 100 meters or what have you. Because what they had discovered with the research is, you know, the athlete is the same athlete today and tomorrow as far as training, ability, strength. Something is changing. What's changing? That he ran 10 seconds yesterday and he ran 12 seconds today. And that's this energy that we're talking about, how we bring ourselves to the situation. So what the Scope app does is allows us to assess our energy before we go into something. And so it's a series of questions, and it will give you a sort of, there's red, which is, your energy's not so crash hot. Maybe now it's not the time to climb Mount Everest. And there's orange and there's green. But if you do get red or orange, what the scope app will do is identify where you're being held back, what part of your energy is not great, and give you suggestions as to how you can change it. Because we have 6 sort of groups of things that influence our sort of overall energy. There's things that you mentioned before, like our values and our beliefs and who we are at the core. That's one thing. If our values are challenged, it's going to bring our energy down. Then there's the mental side of things. So, do we have clarity? Do we have focus? Or are we distracted because the kids are screaming over here, the TV's on over here, and that can, make us not function at our best. Then there's emotional influences. So if we've just had some really sad news and we're grieving, that again is maybe not the best time to run a 100-meter race. We're not going to, bring our best self. There's physical detractors. So are we hungry? Are we thirsty? Have we not been exercising for the past 6 months? Did we not get a good night's sleep last night? There's social effects. So the people around us, do we have support? Do we have community? And then the last one is environmental, which is quite simple. Is it raining? Am I supposed to be running 100 meters and it's pouring with rain? I'm not going to be able to give my best self.
Right.
So what the Scope app can do is it can look at those 6 different influences on our energy and say, okay, you're struggling in the physical side at the moment, because the questions will say things like, have you eaten, those type, it will ask those types of questions. It will ask physical questions, and so it can then give you suggestions, which can either be the more sort of emotional, deeper suggestions, but they can also be practical sort of suggestions as well. So it's quite useful in sort of in the moment.
Okay. Well, and so we'll have information about how to find that app, and we'll also have information about your ELI assessment, which I highly encourage people, if you're interested in this concept of the energy levels, to contact Cheryl and get more information. It really is something that's fascinating and something that really can stay with you throughout the day, throughout weeks, especially leading up to some big things that I've done. It's helped me reframe and help me move, forward into a better energy level. So Cheryl, what is a personal mantra that you have for yourself? Is there something that you have?
Yeah, I have a few little sort of bullet point ones. I was thinking about this, and the first one is awareness is everything. Because for me, I'm a scientist originally, I'm a veterinarian, I'm a logical thinker, and I really lacked self-awareness in so many ways. So gaining that awareness of why I do what I do has been really empowering.
Yeah.
So awareness is everything. Knowledge is power. That's my logical brain. But not just knowledge from books and learning knowledge, but knowledge of your emotions and knowledge of your energy levels, and all those things can be quite empowering. What people say and do is about them. How we interpret what they say and do is about us. So that's can be a challenge. And we either grow or die. So, life is a journey, and we want to, keep growing, keep stretching ourselves, keep challenging ourselves, because it's how we stay alive. What keeps us excited and engaged.
So when you are at a level 1 or a level 2, who do you look for? Who do you look to? What do you do when you need a reset, encouragement, something to get you out of that and into moving to a higher level?
Often for me, level 1, level 2 is when I'm on my own. So often there's not directly people around me. So a go-to can be taking the dog for a walk, just getting out in nature and a bit of breathing and I didn't really answer your question before about mindfulness and meditation, but especially for people who do have those very logical, busy, overactive, over ruminating type of minds. quietening it with a little bit of contemplation and mindfulness can be really powerful. And so for me, walking the dog, um, it can be watching crap television. Australia has just launched the new season of The Bachelorette at the moment, and I'm watching it, I have to admit. So it can be something as simple as that. It's a distraction. It's funny. It's lighthearted. It can be a great book. I'm so excited. I bought Brené Brown's new book today, and I'm so excited to read it. And it can be, all sorts of things. But sometimes, certainly, it will be phoning someone or reaching out. If I'm really in a really level 1 place where I haven't been able to move myself, then it's probably I'm going to be looking for connection. Okay. So I'm going to be calling a friend or, calling a family member or something like that to sort of get that connection. Yeah. Because we've only been in Sydney 12 months, so I haven't got a lot of immediate community sort of close by that I could just, go and knock on someone's door or something like that. So for me, it usually is a long distance. Yeah. So maybe a Skype or a phone call or something like that. But for me, connection is a really big one.
Yeah,
well.
I think that's good. And it's, sometimes I forget how simple it is to just go for a walk and how invigorating that can be and how that can kind of just reshift my thinking. So I like that, the dog walking and the connection is something that we all have somebody we could call.
And funnily for me, I have this crazy fluffy teddy bear dog. And when I go walking with her, people come up to me because she is so cute that people just adore her. So I get connection as well. When I take her out, without fail, some random person, and often, maybe I've lived in Brazil, it may be a Brazilian. And so I'll hear the accent and we get chatting. So the dog is a great sort of icebreaker. Yeah. And with the walking, it's mindful walking as well. It's just saying, wow, it's a beautiful day. Noticing the nature, I will sometimes put something, listen to, but it's usually like a Brené Brown sort of podcast or something like that because I'm trying to sort of lift my energy. But usually I don't have something in my ears when I'm walking. I'm usually trying to sort of be aware of what's around me because I find that quite fueling. Yeah. And the dog's silly, so she always makes me smile. Yeah. She always thinks stupid. So.
I love it. Yeah. Cheryl, we could talk, I think, for hours about this and deep dive into all the different levels. Like I said, we'll have all of the links for those that are watching our Summit friends to be able to dig in a little bit deeper with you, contact information for you, and then also some information about the 7 levels so people can.
Yeah, I can definitely give you a summary and the chart that has all the levels on it. So because we really only just sort of tip of the iceberg on the various levels today. So, but I encourage people to do the ELI. It's different if people have done Myers-Briggs and some of those things before. Those type of assessments you're not supposed to change. Like your Myers-Briggs is supposed to be stable, whereas the ELI is what we call attitudinal. So it's how am I viewing the world today? Where is my mind at today? And it gives you that awareness of where you are, and it gives you that opportunity to move that place. So, while you may be spending a lot of time in level 1 at the moment, knowing that that's what you're doing and why you're doing it can then give you the tools to move out of it. So, the goal with when we work with people with the levels is, they might do one assessment and we repeat it 3 months later. And usually the levels will have increased because people have had that self-awareness and they've done some sort of self-work, I suppose. But it's a window into our sort of soul almost as to who we are at the core, which I find really fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and it gives a really great kind of overview also to the permission that we can grant ourselves. What I love about the work is that the judgment is not there if you're in a level 1 or a level 2 that's not serving you. Instead, it's about granting yourself permission to say, this is where I am currently, and having the tools and the resources to move out of it and into your greater capacity for world-changing stuff.
Yeah, because while I do have a tendency to say the negative levels, and none of them are negative. They are neither good nor bad. They just are, they are the way they are.
Yeah.
But the lower levels don't feel as good,
right,
as the higher levels do.
Yeah.
And we don't achieve our full potential
mm-hmm.
when we're at the lower levels, because it just tends to block us. It tends to just narrow our vision. We don't see the opportunities. We don't see our choices. So that's why we like to try and move people out of those levels.
Yeah. Thank you, Cheryl, very much.
Thank you. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, you too.